This is going to be a mixture of a guide for newer players, so to speak, as well as just me explaining the strategies that I use to beat both high levels of Crucible and all levels of Crucible on all classes. First of all, let's just state there's a run going on right now, which I'll be cutting in sometimes to talk about the run, but for the most part I just get to talk about the strategies that I use. And one of the things that I think is a great thing to point out immediately, since as you can see I've got a bit of a greed starter there, starting off with greed and choosing greed as early as possible is usually the correct play. A lot of the time it's going to pay off extremely well, and I feel like a lot of my strategy is based around finding the correct pieces, and a lot of the time the more greed you've got, the more you're able to actually find the pieces that you need. Now, the basis of my strategy is what I would call consistency, and what this means is I want to be shooting the best possible shot each shot. And usually I've found what that means is I'm adding significantly less orbs into my deck than normal, just because I want to be shooting the good orbs in my deck basically every single time. And if this means I'm more likely to reload, that's perfectly fine, because a lot of what my strategy is trying to set up for the later areas, because there's a lot of stuff in Area 1 which you can kind of just eke on by. You're not really going to struggle too much into some fights as long as you get good lineups, or maybe you get good tempo passives. And getting like a good tempo passive in Area 1 just allows you to use that tempo passive to take on Area 1, and you can set up your deck and your passives for Area 3. And there are a lot of ways you can do that. There are three main things I think you need to focus on for when you're trying to formulate a winning run. You want some form of scaling. Usually this means actually scaling, but sometimes it can just be a ridiculous level of damage, which Valorant has been known to do that, and Spinventa also can do that, but it's less common. Most of the time it's just scaling, of which there are some excellent scaling sources in the game, and yeah, sometimes it can just be having more than enough damage. So you want scaling, you want good AoE powers. There are a lot of fights, especially in Area 2, where you just need good AoE powers to blast through them. It just trivializes a lot of fights, it's necessary in some more, as well as it can just be a winning strategy. A lot of the time it just works out a lot. And the third one is probably most important as well, healing. You just want as many either healing effects or damage reduction effects as you can fit well into a deck. You're not going to want all healing effects, but the chances that you're going to want a few is pretty good. Now, all three of these are extremely recommended, but technically, as long as you're meeting like at least 2 out of the 3, you'll probably be fine. A lot of the time, if you just do 2 of them extremely well, you're not really going to need the third that much. Most of the time, though, I would just recommend trying to find all 3 of them. If I'm picking up anything, I'm trying to check if it meets any of those attributes. Does it either like help my AoE, help my scaling, or help my healing? And if not, usually if I'm taking it, the main reason is going to be because it provides me a lot of tempo. And tempo is great, of course, it allows you to get through the places that you're currently at. It just usually doesn't translate that well late game, which is where the scaling comes into play. But a lot of picks early game can indeed be tempo. And where that really comes into play is it allows you to take on early elites, which can be extremely important, because as you'll see in this elite fight, it's not exactly the most friendly elite fight for me. I kind of took a beating. But if you pick up the early tempo orbs, of which there are more than a few good ones, some of the ones I've been really impressed with recently is Toil and Trouble. I think Balance is a fair call out as well. Believiation, and on Peglin, let's just call it Rubborb, shall we? Those are all some excellent tempo orbs that I would very seriously recommend picking up an awful lot. Usually they're not exactly going to be your late game plan, but all of them have the power to be exactly that. It's just you need to find, for some of them, a lot of synergy pieces to make that work. But what tempo orbs and relics do is it allows you to take on these elite fights without having to go through that whole hassle. And being able to take on elite fights and get good relic options like these can be extremely important, because rare relics, ones you get from elites and sometimes chests and stores and stuff, are really, really good into the later stages of the game. Like Pumpkin Pie, for example, can be so handy, and it has some really, really strong combinations. So to recap, you want tempo to make sure that you can get the things that you need to fulfill those 3 tiers, and then once you have enough tempo, you just want to make sure that everything is funneling towards those 3 tiers as far as I'm concerned. And a lot of the time what this ends up looking like is I'm going to want gold to work on those 3 tiers later, And some of the best ways to do that is either at a store, just buying relics. That's frankly one of the best. You also get more orb options at the store, so that's also great. And then consistency, again, the removal at stores is great just because it allows you to shoot the orbs you want to be shooting more, which is very seriously important. Because if you're not shooting your bombs or your bob orbs, or your, what's a good scaling orb to mention? Let's just say like Machoska, because I feel like that's a fair orb to call for a scaling orb. You can easily find scaling with it. Then you can be in an extremely unfortunate spot because those pebbles and terribles and horribles, if you're starting with them, are really not exactly good. And the starting orbs for each class, they're all very decent, but usually they're very much tempo based, right? You're probably not going to be using them for your late game plan, although frankly all of them can be used for it. It's just a bit unlikely for that to be happening. Another important point that was brought up is how do you decide whether or not to go to question marks, to fights, or to elites? A lot of the time with my map pathing, I'll try and focus as many elites as possible. Elites give you rare relics and gold and the potential for orbs, all of which are pretty crucial for winning late game. So I just like to be able to take on as many elites as possible. Sometimes that isn't possible just because of how my health is or whatever. You know, that's fine. It's just usually pretty unfortunate. And usually I value elites pretty equivalently to stores, although that also depends on how much gold I have. So how do we compare question marks to fights? A lot of the time where I'll prioritize fights over question marks a lot more is when I don't have enough gold for stores. Because I really like being able to buy everything I want from stores, and that's pretty important, and fights is the best way to do that. Question marks, of course, can also get you that, but that's a bit harder. And the great thing about question marks, and why I like going to them quite a lot, also if you have like Orbit Story or Sparrings for Investment, which we have here, it's also great, but it can get you random removals, and it can get you random elite fights, as well as some other things which can be pretty big, and generally that just makes them feel pretty good to go to, but it really can just depend on the run. Both question marks and fights can be extremely useful. Alright, lovely, I get to talk now. We have some fun stuff here, don't we? Sparrings for Investment plus Eglins, that's pretty cool. Pumpkin Pie is actually pretty amazing, because I think I'm just going to force Rubborb. Rubborb is just an amazing orb, which definitely has the scaling you need to beat Area 3, just because of how much it does. It provides a lot of tempo, and I think I'm going to try and play for Adventurer's Backpack. That also bypasses the consistency as well, because I'll be able to consistently shoot my Rubborb. Oh, there actually was a Sand Arrows. I was considering the Mask of Sorrow for the Sand Arrows, but I did decide on the Pumpkin Pie. A bit of a shame I turned down the Weighted Chip, I believe. Since Weighted Chip Pumpkin Pie is insane, of course, but that's fine. And yes, I also considered Mask of Sorrow Pocket Sand, but it's not really anything particularly real. So of course we're going to want gold here. I definitely want the removal. Removals are great. I think I'd definitely go with Sand Arrows, and I don't really need Badgies. Badgies is more of a combo tool. Shield Basher is definitely a store new relic. I did consider a Balance earlier, as you saw. Balance, the upgrade from level 1 to 2 is great. It's really good tempo, but I decided it wasn't what I wanted to do this run. And what was the other one I considered? Concentrication. It's great tempo, and it's particularly good against Resistance Knight, but especially with the change to Resistance Knight where Transparency is also super effective. I consider it a lot less. Sand Arrows is quite good here, but also I'm incredibly greedy and I want to save more gold for Sparrings for Investment. It technically also gets me more healing, but I think Sand Arrows will just save me health over the course of the run. It doesn't have any power in this boss fight though, which is why I was considering not doing it. I will just dupe a level 1 Rubborb. You should really rarely dupe a level 1 orb, but I think this is a situation where I can get away with it. My deck could be a lot better, yeah, but I should still have enough power to win this. One of the things that might be surprising is just how much level 1 Pebbles can do. It's why I stick with them for ages, because they can just work for a long time. You just need to be able to get good use out of them, which can be a bit hard. Anyway, a big part of the reason why I just like the elites so much is it feels like a lot of the time you can easily build your run off of the rare relics that you get. And in particular, those first few rare relics that you get, it can be a really good idea to try and build your run off of that, which is why just being able to go to more elites and just pick up more rare relics can just be so important. And it's also part of the reason why I like holding all of my gold for the stores, because you hold your gold for the stores and then you buy the common relics that synergize well with those rare relics, as well as you can buy any potential orbs that also work with that game plan. since a lot of the time the rare relics won't necessarily directly give you a game plan, but if you can actually build the desired game plan that it's looking for, it can easily crush many enemies, including sometimes like the final boss in Cruci 20. Like, there are a lot of very valid comps you can go with in this game, and knowing which comps to play is also important. I guess I get a gold again. Questionable is just really good here. Like, it's just so good. I think I'm just meant to take it simply. And then boss relics, we get Wonder Skull to a Rot. That's actually interesting. Peglin Satchel, really not a big fan of this one. Unpretentious Amulet is good, but not on Cruci 0. Wonder Skull to a Wrath, it really could be quite funny here. Spheriday's Fate. I could also just frankly skip here. I feel like I don't really need any of this stuff. Peglin Satchel. Yeah, I've got so many bad upgrades in my deck, and I don't really care about Rubbobs. Rubbobs are going to win me the run. I really don't need this. Yeah, no, I think this is just skip, straight up. I think that, I think I'll be fine. And just plus 50 gold, which is working towards a heal and more gold for me. Like, just not bad overall. But yeah, as you saw in that fight, Rubborb is doing pretty amazingly. And as I mentioned previously, you want to know what kind of comps you can go for. Rubborb is definitely a comp in and of itself. Most of the time, the comps that you're going to go for are going to be mixes and matches of each other. You know, you don't have like a full healing run, but if you collect a whole bunch of amazing healing relics, it's much easier to then build a real build off of that. And that's just the kind of thing that you'll pick up the more you play the game. It's like, oh, I used this cool Rubborb build previously, oh, I know how to do it again. Or oh, there was this bomb build that I could go for, oh, I should pick up this Bob and Shock Absorber. Because just doing little things like that is how you make it much easier to tackle, especially the high Crucible levels, but also just increase how much you can win. And a lot of that is just going to be testing out things. Oh, is this Inferno good here? No, probably not. Oh, is the Crit Crit enough here? No, you probably need more crits on the board. Oh, if I get multiple with my Generator, is that enough? Well, if you've seen my most recent videos, you'll find that that is something I've been seriously impressed with recently. As it turns out, it's an incredibly strong thing. Speaking of incredibly strong things, Refilibuster right there, which brings me on to another point. What exactly are the good AoE tools, what are the good healing tools, and what are the good scaling tools that I should be looking out for? Now, this will change, of course, but for now, some of the excellent AoE tools that I'm very much on the lookout for, Refilibuster for one, it's absolutely amazing. Bobbob's also great, in that similar vein, collateral damage is also there, and also like Bomb Baton. And you'll notice 3 of those things that I just stated are bomb relics. So what does this mean? Yeah, bombs are pretty strong. They're still extremely strong, and there are also 3 boss relics that can go with all 3 of those, and generally they're all pretty good. It just depends on where you're at. You know, they're pretty specific, and a lot of them do require you to have health if you want to get good value off of them. But if you can get good value from them, it can kind of just like win you runs. But yes, bombs are really good. If you're playing on less than Cruci 12, I seriously recommend you do bomb stuff, and Refilibuster is just generally pretty good. There isn't really a Crucible level that makes it a whole lot worse. I guess Crucible 5 makes it a whole lot worse with the 1 less refresh, but it's still really good. And one of the other great things about Refilibuster is it scales so well with multi-ball. Just any multi-ball boss relic is incredibly valuable just because of Refilibuster. And would you look at that? Let's move on to what are the good scaling sources that I should be looking for. I think Refresh Perspective is ridiculous. If you're playing Spimento or Peglin, which admittedly are the 2 classes that can actually get Refresh Perspective, it is so easy to find a strategy which actually supports Refresh Perspective. Do I think that Rubborbs is that strategy? If you had one source of multi-ball, I'd say yes. Otherwise, it works well, but it's not as good as, say, a multi-ball plus refresh perspective strategy. But especially since we've got multiple refreshes on the board, it's just so good here. So refresh perspective, I think refresher course is also a fair shout. A lot of the time, you're going to want to find extra refresh sources, and gaining the circle and finesse while you do that's just great. You've got some smaller stuff like Morley Flower. There's the added advantage training Tabard Baladin nonsense that you can get. And I think a big one that I should also point out is Glorious Suffering, and what's the other +3/+3 one? Seal Conviction. Yeah, both of those boss relics are really good. One of them just gives you immediate damage as well as the potential for fifth damage, but you're probably not getting it. And Glorious Suffering, which is frankly one of the best scaling sources in the game. It's crazy just how fast you can get damage with Glorious Suffering. Like, you have a Glorious Suffering, a Generate Orb, and a Go for Gold or something, and you can just like one-shot elites and bosses on shot 1. Like, it's crazy how much you can do with that kind of stuff. And what are the good healing sources I'd recommend? Hopping Corn is great, but I think it's just consistently very good. Slimy Salve, if you can get it, is also amazing. But pretty much any healing orb is fair game, to be honest. I'm not sure about the new one, but realistically, if you're just doing a run and you just pick up a healing orb, you're probably making your deck significantly better, and you really want healing. Alrighty, another store. As you can see, Rubborb just absolutely tore through him there. I got the refresh perspective, which is such ridiculous scaling. It's just so good for me right now. There's Machoska in the store, which I think playing for Machoska is just a great idea. We've got the remove there to play for consistency, as I mentioned. Insane levels of healing there as well. I should realistically just buy as much as possible here because I don't have any more question marks. And there is a lot of stuff that I should just be buying here. Just buying Lantern of the Apple a day is just like pretty solid. Buys you a lot more health. So let's talk about consistency again, because I don't usually like picking up that many orbs. Most of the time I'm picking up an excessive amount of orbs, it's probably going to be just a whole lot of one of the same orbs. So here it's Rubborb, right? Because I'm trying to hit an Adventurer's Backpack this run. Will it work out? Who knows? All I know is that if I fight more elites, the chances I find an Adventurer's Backpack increases. Usually I wouldn't exactly recommend doing that. If it pays off, it feels absolutely amazing, and I've definitely run Crucible 20 runs because of that. I believe it was a Bull Lightning, and not too recent, I guess. But it can definitely work out, but for the most part, I don't like picking up orbs if they don't either meet one of those three brackets. Either they give me extra AoE power, they give me extra scaling, or just massive amounts of damage, or they give me healing. Pretty much the only other cases I'll pick up orbs are if either it's granting me amazing tempo, or B, it's granting me a solid high roll opportunity, which usually the high roll opportunity is leaning into scaling, I think is the one it leans into the most. Probably also the other two as well though. But high roll is basically just like, I probably shouldn't buy it here, but there's a chance it could pay out later and it would be so worth it if it could. So for example, I think, the Potion Bolt was that. Where the Potion Bolt is technically healing, but I'm not really expecting to get much healing off of it. But more so if I get stuff like Refresh Perspective or Pressure Course, which I got, then it would be pretty amazing for the deck. As well as being able to slime orbs in a Rubborb build, slime pegs in a Rubborb build is seriously important. Like, realistically, if I was trying to win this run, I wouldn't have picked up this many Rubborbs and I would have been picking up some of the Generate Orbs I've seen instead. But no, I just had to go and add more Rubborbs to my deck. So those are some of the reasons why I would add orbs to my deck. I think the other big thing as to why I'd add a whole bunch of orbs to my deck, it's pretty rare though, is there are some passives like Spinvent Originality, Anvil, Froggo Amulet, and technically Adventurer's Backpack, but that's kind of different. Or is it? Adventurer's Backpack's also the same, where like they're like rule breakers. They're like, you just want to add orbs to your deck because you need to like probably not reload, as well as you're gaining pretty good benefits for adding the orbs to your deck. Even when you're doing that, you still want to be pretty specific about the orbs that you're adding. You want to be adding them to your deck for a pretty specific reason, like maybe you're fighting a Coin Dragon and you want that Concentrication because you only have one refresh on the board and you want to be able to just aim straight at the refresh and hit it. That's frankly a very good reason. A lot of the times I will consider adding a Concentrication to my deck purely for that reason because it's pretty good. Most of the time I feel like it's just best for me not to add orbs to my deck because those orbs are going to be effectively significantly worse than the rest of my deck when we get to the later areas, particularly Area 3. A lot of orbs don't scale that well into Area 3 unless you have a pretty specific setup. So for example, we saw like Two's Company back there, where most of the time I would not recommend picking up a Two's Company, but there are definitely scenarios where you can grab your Two's Company into Area 3 and have a great setup and have it be basically the best orb in your deck. You know, that was one of my runs recently. Pretty much every single orb has its use, but a lot of the time you're probably not going to want that Necromancer, right? That Necromancer is probably going to not actually get any value because you have enough refreshing. Like most of the times where I pick up Necromancer, I probably only have like one refresh on board, and even then, I probably still shouldn't have picked it up. I'm just trying to use it after it got recently buffed. But to put it simply, if the orb isn't either filling a weakness that you have, creating a high roll game plan in your future, or just being what you plan on bringing into the final fight, you should probably question about whether or not it's a good pickup for the long term. Because a lot of the time I feel like the answer could probably easily be yes. I will happily admit though that I am very hesitant to add things to my deck, and that does generally get me killed. Which leads me on to another point. A lot of the time it doesn't get me killed, but you know, I see especially Cruci 20 as more of a throw a bunch of axes at the wall and see what sticks, right? not all runs are going to make it, and that's fine. Another question I've gotten is how many orbs should I be ending my deck with? I mean, this does change from run to run, but let's say I'm building a perfect deck. I've got Rubborb as my damage engine because, as proven here, Rubborb is a pretty amazing damage engine. It can achieve a lot. Let's say I've got a Bobble for my AoE power, since Bobble achieves an absolute ton. That Bobble could be like a collateral damage or something like that, because there's a lot of good options there. For healing, let's say I've got Balm as a first statement. Pretty much any of the healing orbs could suffice well there. But Balm for healing, and then the fourth slot, mystery slot, let's just say it's like a refresh Urkel. Or maybe it's like a concentrication for like Coin Dragon or something like that. Something that just like makes sure that I've actually got the pegs I need for my big shot. Because I just need to make sure my big shot's landing. A lot of the time that rubble could be like balanced. But in my eyes, that's what's like a perfect deck is. So I'd probably have those 4 orbs and maybe the horrible if I've got it. And maybe also I've been a bit slack and I still have 1 more orb that I should have removed from my deck. Yeah, I feel like that deck would just be pretty solid. I could beat a lot of the game with that. Like, it basically just has all of the tools I need for it and nothing more. Which just allows me to shoot whatever orb I need to shoot in the moment I need to shoot it pretty much, because it's just a few discards until I get there. Rubborb really is just an amazing orb. It has such good damage, as well as the shots that it pulls off are just absolutely incredible. Yep, and that's absolutely what I mean by Rubborb is just cheat codes. Like, it just does so much. I've been spending some 35s here because I think that's just perfectly fine. We just want a lot of our Rubborbs upgraded. I have amazing cheese here with Branch Member. My tankiness is really good with like Apple a Day, Decoy Orb, and of course all of the healing. My scaling's great with Refresh Perspective, Refresher Course, to the point where I think that like here, Leave the Rest Below is insane. Endless Devouring is a really bad idea. I really shouldn't pick up Endless Devouring. Safety Regulations would also be great for all the Pierce. At this stage I could take Molten Mantle and it would also be great. But I think I kind of just want to prove that like you don't need to hit on your boss relics to be able to win. Like, it's just not something you need to do. A lot of the time you can just build a deck with good enough passives, and those passives have good enough synergy with your orbs that you're just totally fine. I took the Machoska because it's just a great way to get my deck upgraded for future Rubborbs, as well as it's just great at doing a lot. Boss relics are usually going to be a pretty integral part of your game plan. Maybe it's giving you the scaling you need, maybe it's just providing more multi-ball, which is supporting your main game plan a whole lot more. Or maybe it's just like Leave the Rest for later, where, I mean, it would have worked out great there. But they're definitely not required. And a big thing to note is pretty much all boss passives have downsides, and sometimes you just can't afford to take those downsides, and that 50 gold option is now there. Like, that was added last patch, and it's a great addition. And sometimes it's definitely the correct call to take it. Was it the correct call to take it this run? No. But I just did it so that I can prove that, like, you don't need boss relics to win. Usually they're just pretty helpful. But sometimes I do just make funny decisions like that to make my run harder. Okay, this is not something you should ever do, but I'm in a situation to where I can do it. Infinite Wingate is an amazing source of healing, and if you can use it, you undoubtedly should be. But, there's also something funny you can do where you can challenge yourself, and yeah, I'm just gonna do that. Just deal with having half max HP. This navigating here is fine. For this last segment, I'll just talk a bit about dealing with each of the Cruci levels, because if you are going to play Crucible, there are a lot of nasty things that you're going to have to deal with, but every single Cruci level has a way to counterplay it, really, which is, it's great to know exactly how to counterplay all of them. Some of them do just get countered by effectively having more healing, so that's basically what I'll just say for them. Cruci 1. So you get the extra pebble as well as the -0, -1. The -0, -1 is actually a pretty big deal. You're going to want more tempo on average for your early elite fights, just to make sure you're not taking like 1 more hit from the Minotaur, which on average that's probably what you're going to be taking. Just because losing that 1 crit damage is actually a pretty big deal as it turns out. You know, like Complex Claw is not a bad passive after all, getting the extra damage is extremely nice. But the +1 pebble is unfortunate, you know, that's +1 remove that you need, which means you're spending more gold on removes, and because you just want to make your deck as consistent as possible. Cruci 2, funnily enough, I don't actually consider this a downside that much. You will have some runs where you will just die to a random elite, which can suck. Oh, and it's something that can be nasty as well as you like enter area 2, and then you immediately get a demon hand. That can be so miserable. But I don't really consider that a downside. Cruci 3, speaking of not considering it a downside, Baladin absolutely loves this one. In pretty much all situations, Baladin's just going to love Cruci 3. The rest of the classes, you're going to either want to increase your normal damage, technically also increasing your crit damage just for this is fine.
just because that way at least sometimes you're dealing you're effectively dealing a normal amount of damage on average then. But like just adding more crits is a great way to counteract it. Cruci 4, this is one of those just get more healing relics, and it's why healing is such a crucial part of this game. Cruci 5, this one is dirty, absolutely rough. Both Cruci 5 and 15 are just really, really annoying to deal with. Either dealing significantly more damage or just adding more refreshes back onto the board is an absolutely great way to deal with this. One of the other really unfortunate side effects of this is getting some of the boss relics becomes a lot harder because you really do need your refreshes. 6, this is like you just need to get more scaling to be able to overcome this. 7, this is one of those healing ones. You just need to make sure that you have more healing. 8's really rough. Molten Gold is a great way to counteract it because I'm pretty sure it's -10 and Molten Gold is +10 to counteract that. You just lose the starting gold as well, which is unfortunate. I personally dislike Cruci 8 an awful lot. Cruci 9, that one is just purely another make sure you've got good healing. Cruci 10, this is make sure you've got good scaling. Cruci 11, this is you need to make sure that you're actually removing over the course of the run. A lot of the time I will slack on my removes, which it's a misplay. I really need to make sure that my deck is as good as possible, but sometimes you can get away with it, and stuff like ambidextrity helps out a lot. Cruci 12, this one is really unfortunate. You absolutely still can play bomb-focused game plans at Cruci 12 and later. It just becomes a lot harder. But stuff like Recombobulator is still just so good, and Enhanced Gunpowder plus Short Fuse is just a great way to get damage anyway. Cruci 13 and Cruci 14, these are both just make sure you've got a good source of healing. Cruci 15 is absolutely brutal. Technically it is also make sure you've got good healing, but stuff like a Round Guard or a Decoil gains so much more value when you have Cruci 15 because you just can't afford the enemies taking this extra turn. It just gets so rough, especially if you've got a small deck, which is what I'm advocating for. Cruci 16, the Horrible, it's really rough in particular for the dupe event because suddenly the dupe is just so much more annoying. You could get the random Horrible, or you could spend 4 health to dupe your entire deck, and now you've got the extra Horrible in your deck, which you just can't afford to be shooting the Horrible. Having a big deck's a good way to play around the Horrible, technically, yes. You just need to make sure that you're shooting good orbs. But also, ambidextrity is my personal favorite way to just get around the Horrible because it basically negates a lot of the bad RNG you could otherwise face. Cruci 17, mini-bosses deal increased damage. Yes, make sure you have good healing. Cruci 18, Hagglin's Shop has higher prices. One of the really nice things about this is Collusion basically fully negates it. You just have to do the slight increase in the removal and the orb buys. But, this one isn't too bad, especially since if you get additional greed, you got to deal with it pretty well. But obviously, I like gold, so I dislike it a bit. Cruci 19, you want to make sure that you have good AoE to deal with this. Funnily enough, it also does help out grinding Monstera. That's actually very noticeable. And Cruci 20. For the most part, the way how bosses are affected, you're just going to need the more scaling. But some of them will require a different solution, which it just depends from boss to boss. Most of them, on average, though, I think are basically going to kill you 3 or 4 turns faster. Or maybe you're killing them 4 turns slower kind of thing. I think that pretty much wraps up what I was going to say for this section. So if you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll get to them hopefully soon. Otherwise, the other movie will be taking over imminently.
Alright, now the store, and wow, would you look at this. Wow, there's a lot of good stuff here. So realistically, it's fine because I'm not going to shoot either of them. But I technically remove that and buy the stuff that's sling, so the pebble is now effectively better than the dagger was. I have bomb combo, so if there was a chest I could collect the passive, but also it's just good for getting damage on a lot of maps, and I now have even more upgrading. You'll notice there I just got Spiness, +1 refresh. I also got Transparency a bit ago, which is great for just giving me access to AoE, because before I just didn't have any. But now my upgrading powers are even better. I've got the extra refresh on the board, so I get even better pinging powers. And as you can see, I just don't need boss passes this run. I've just picked up excellent orbs, most of which have been Rubbobs. And that's just been more than enough. The dupe on the potion bolt, the remove there was valuable as well, but I think the dupe was definitely the correct play. And I imagine a shot like this is just going to completely end the fight now. My scaling's so good, and something I think is very important to note here is I have many good rare relic hits. There's a lot of great stuff I can hit now. Grinding Monstera is completely useless. Alien's Rock also useless, and Shoot Scales also useless. Well, unfortunately, if I hit your crits refresh or refresh crit, Adventurer's Backpack, There's a whole bunch of other stuff which I could have hit, which would have been amazing. Even just like a peg bag would have been amazing as well. But instead I get a tiny bit of max HP maybe? I can dream. Yeah, but what I'm saying is you don't need boss relics to win, and just being able to prioritize elites as much as I have been able to, that's nice to see. Oh right, I forgot about the guaranteed relic. Betsy's Hedge. I don't have Fleece, so I can take Betsy's Hedge. Augur would be the hold that I was missing usually, but I just don't need Pierce for this boss fight. But yeah, despite having no boss relics, and I didn't find the Adventurer's Backpack, which I set up for, I've still just got such a good build here that is going to absolutely obliterate him. Yeah, one of the other things this run did, did a great job of showing you what not to do as well. Because generally building for Adventurer's Backpack when you're not going to hit it, when you haven't hit it yet, is not exactly the best idea, but obviously in this run it's worked out pretty well just because Rubborb, especially with this build, is simply good enough that I've been able to get away with it. As well as Inferno Ingot, halving your max HP, it's not exactly ideal. Like at this stage our board is already so upgraded that like we don't really care what he does anymore, I'm pretty sure. Which is crazy that that's occurred this fast, but I mean that's just how good this build is, right? Like we've just got so much going for us. Probably 4,000 damage because I've already got 5 Spiness. And now the Rubborbs can just do so much. If I had a Powder Collector here or a Durable, I think that I would just be able to straight up kill him. But I don't. Boss relics not required, and I'm shooting my good orb every single shot, like I said I wanted to. Usually if you're going to fill your deck with orbs, I would recommend you have one of at least like Spin Bench Originality and their different orbs. Froggo Amulet is a decent excuse. Anvil as well is also pretty decent just because that's a great way to get so much tempo. I love how I'm just collecting 4,000 damage in the background. So like Rubborb is just so good against 2 out of the 3 bosses. And against the one remaining boss, they're super weak to AoE damage. And we have pretty decent AoE damage, but it wouldn't technically matter here because our damage is just so good. Like look at this, it's just 5,000 damage. You see what I mean by like Rubborb is just cheat codes? Like just pick up a Rubborb and you'll profit. Didn't even have Adventurer's Backpack, which by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It would have been plus 14. Plus 14 crit damage, oh my god. And then I could have combined that with a Christmas Fleece if I'd actually managed to hit the Adventurer's Backpack, because of course Fleece would have been so much better. But like, I just had so many rare relics that would have been great hits, as well as my healing was up to date, so I could just keep taking on the rare relic, taking on the elite fights. Because like Bombs Apply Blind 2 would have also been pretty insane. Just being able to lock down enemies was really nice, and it's been a while since I've gotten that combo as well. But yeah, starting off with Greed Relics was amazing. Like, I just got such a powerful start because I had that much gold, and frankly the map lined up pretty well for it. As well as I just could afford to play for Rubborb tempo, and the Rubborb was pretty solid tempo. It just kind of slapped through everything. And the ambidextrony for the remove... the ambidextrony to effectively act as the extra removes was also great, because it just meant later on, instead of like choosing to remove a pebble, I could just dupe a potion board, and having an extra potion board in this deck was pretty damn solid.